The great space station called Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars. It was bigger than most cities and home to the Galactic Council. Inside its metal halls, representatives from dozens of worlds met to discuss problems that affected the entire galaxy. Today was different. Today, fear filled every room. Ambassador Zethkari stood in the center of the main chamber. His blue skin was pale with worry, and his large eyes darted around the room at the other aliens sitting in their floating chairs. He had been waiting for 3 hours to speak, but the council moved slowly. They always moved slowly. "Please," Zethkari said, his voice cracking. "My people are dying. Every day we wait, thousands more of my kind are murdered." The Valian ambassador held up a small device that showed images from his home world. The pictures were horrible. Beautiful crystal cities lay in ruins. Parks filled with strange alien trees were now blackened wastelands. Bodies of his people lay scattered in the streets. "The Korvac came to our world 6 months ago," he continued. "They said we were weak. They said weak things deserved to die. We tried to talk to them. We offered them art, music, knowledge. They laughed and started killing." An alien that looked like a giant bird spoke up from across the room. "Ambassador Zethkari, we understand your pain, but the Council cannot act without proper procedures. We must follow the law." "What law?" Zethkari shouted, surprising everyone. Valians never raised their voices. "What law says you can watch a whole race die while you debate?" The bird-like alien ruffled his feathers. "We have sent 3 formal protests to the Korvac government. We have imposed trade restrictions. These things take time to work." "Time?" Zethkari's voice broke. "We had 8 billion people when this started. Now we have less than 1 million. They hunt us for sport. They eat our children. Time is what we do not have." A snake-like creature with 6 arms spoke next. "Perhaps we could send peacekeepers, a small force to monitor the situation." "The Korvac destroyed our defense fleet in 1 day," Zethkari said. "What would peacekeepers do against them? They are warriors. They live for war. They have been conquering worlds for 1,000 years." The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew about the Korvac. They were 7 feet tall and covered in thick armor-like skin. They had claws that could cut through metal and strength that could crush bones. Worse, they had ships and weapons that could destroy planets. Most species in the galaxy were peaceful. They had moved beyond war long ago. They explored space to find friends, not enemies. When they met the Korvac 50 years ago, they tried to make peace. The Korvac took their gifts and then attacked their colonies. "There must be someone who can help," Zethkari pleaded. "Someone who understands fighting." The bird-like alien shifted uncomfortably. "All the major military powers are busy with their own problems. The Zephyrians are dealing with pirates. The Alterans are fighting a civil war." "What about the humans?" Zethkari asked quietly. The entire chamber went silent. Even the soft humming of the air system seemed to stop. Several aliens looked at each other nervously. The snake creature spoke first. "The humans are primitive. They have barely left their own star system. Their technology is centuries behind ours. But they fight," Zethkari said. "I have read their history files. They have been at war with each other for thousands of years. They understand violence." An elephant-like alien trumpeted a laugh. "They fight with chemical explosives and metal projectiles. The Korvac would destroy them in minutes." "Would they?" Zethkari asked. "I have studied human wars. They do not always win with better weapons. Sometimes they win by being more clever, more determined, more willing to do whatever it takes." The bird-like alien looked uncomfortable. "We do not discuss the humans much for good reasons. Their history is disturbing. They have killed millions of their own kind. They have destroyed their own cities. They wage war like it is an art form." "Maybe that is what we need," Zethkari said quietly. "Maybe we need someone who understands war." "Absolutely not," the snake creature hissed. "Humans are unpredictable, dangerous. They solve every problem with violence." "My people solved problems with art and poetry," Zethkari replied. "Now they are all dead." Maybe violence is the answer when you face violent enemies. The debate went on for hours. Some aliens argued that asking humans for help would make the council look weak. Others worried that humans might be worse than the Korvac. A few suggested that primitive humans could not possibly help against advanced alien technology. Finally, as the station's artificial sun began to dim for the night cycle, the bird-like alien called for order. "We will vote," he announced. "All in favor of sending a request for aid to Earth indicate now." Lights began to appear throughout the chamber. Green for yes, red for no. Zeth Kari watched nervously as the votes were counted. Red lights seemed to outnumber green ones. His heart sank. Then more green lights appeared. Aliens who had been silent during the debate were voting yes. The final count was close. Very close. "The motion passes by 7 votes," the bird-like alien announced. "We will send a message to Earth requesting humanitarian aid for the Valian refugees." Zeth Kari felt tears run down his blue cheeks. It was not much, but it was hope. For the first time in months, his people had hope. As the council session ended and aliens began floating away to their quarters, the snake creature slithered over to Zeth Kari. "I hope you know what you have done," it said quietly. "Humans are not like us. If you wake up their warrior instincts, you may not like what follows." Zeth Kari looked at the images of his dead world still glowing on his device. "My friend," he said softly, "my people are already facing the worst thing imaginable. Whatever the humans bring, it cannot be worse than extinction." The message to Earth was sent that night. It was simple and direct. A peaceful species was being wiped out by killers. They needed help, any help. On Earth, in a building called the White House, alarms began to ring. The secure phone rang at 3 a.m. in the White House. President Katie Walsh was already awake, reading reports in her private study. She had trouble sleeping these days. Running a country was hard work. "Madam President," her aide said through the phone, "General Harrison needs to see you right away. He says it's about the space program." 20 minutes later, President Walsh sat in the Situation Room deep under the White House. The room was filled with her top advisors. General Pete Harrison stood at the front, pointing at a large screen that showed strange symbols. "This message came through our deep space listening station in Nevada 2 hours ago," General Harrison said. "It's from something called the Galactic Council." The president stared at the screen. "Are you telling me aliens just sent us a message?" "Yes, ma'am. We've been expecting this day for years. The message is asking for help. There's a species called the Valians who are being wiped out by something called the Korvac. They want humanitarian aid." Secretary of State Lisa Grant leaned forward. "How do we know this is real? It could be a hoax." General Harrison pressed. A button and the screen changed. Now it showed pictures of destroyed cities and dead bodies. The bodies were not human. They had blue skin and large eyes. "The images are real, ma'am. Our scientists have analyzed everything. This is genuine contact from space." The room fell silent. Everyone stared at the horrible pictures. President Walsh had seen war zones before, but this was different. This was genocide on a scale she could barely imagine. Defense Secretary Mike Collins spoke up. "What exactly are they asking for? Food? Medicine? Refugee transport?" "They're asking for protection," General Harrison replied. "These Korvacs sound like professional killers. They've been murdering Valians for months. The aliens tried diplomacy, economic pressure, formal protests, nothing worked. So they want us to fight aliens with spaceships and advanced weapons?" Lisa Grant asked. "We can barely get to our own moon reliably." General Harrison smiled grimly. "Ma'am, we've been preparing for this possibility for 15 years. Ever since we detected the first alien signals, we knew contact would come eventually. We hoped it would be peaceful. We prepared for war." He pressed another button. The screen now showed blueprints of ships and weapons. Project 7 has been building humanity's first combat starship. The USS Defiance launched its test flight last month. We've also been training special operations teams for off-world combat. President Walsh studied the plans. The ship looked crude compared to what she imagined alien technology would be like. But it was real. It was humanity's first step into space warfare. How long would it take to get there? She asked. The Valian home system is 43 light years away. Our new faster-than-light drive can make the trip in 6 days. The president looked around the room at her advisors. Some looked excited. Others looked terrified. "Ma'am," Lisa Grant said carefully, "maybe we should think about this more. We don't know anything about galactic politics. We could start a war we can't finish." "We could also save an entire species," Mike Collins replied. "This could be our chance to prove that Earth belongs in the galaxy." General Harrison stepped forward. "Ma'am, I've read every file we have on human military history. We're not the strongest species. We're not the smartest. But we're survivors. We adapt. We improvise. We find ways to win when winning seems impossible." President Walsh stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Washington, D.C. slept peacefully. Most people had no idea that aliens existed. Soon everyone would know. "If we do this," she said, "how many people would we send?" 12, ma'am. Our best operators from every branch of the military, each one chosen for their ability to think fast and fight hard. 12 people against an entire alien army? Ma'am, 12 of the right people can change everything. Look at human history. Small groups of determined fighters have stopped armies before. The president turned back to the room. Who would lead this team? Colonel Jack Murphy, Army Special Forces. He's led operations in every major conflict for the past 15 years. His men would follow him into hell. President Walsh looked at the pictures of dead aliens on the screen. Children, families, people who had never hurt anyone, murdered by creatures who enjoyed killing. "Get me Colonel Murphy on the phone," she said. An hour later, Colonel Jack Murphy sat in a secure office at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The phone call from the president had been brief but clear. Aliens existed. Aliens were committing genocide. Earth was going to stop it. Murphy looked at the files spread across his desk, pictures of his potential team members, the best from every service. People he had worked with before. People he trusted with his life. Lieutenant Commander Amy Stone from the Navy SEALs. She could fight underwater, in the air, or in space. She never backed down from impossible missions. Staff Sergeant Tony Garcia from Delta Force, urban warfare specialist. If you needed to clear a building full of enemies, Garcia was your man. Captain Lisa Brooks from Air Force Special Operations. Pilot and ground fighter. She could fly anything with wings and shoot anything that moved. Murphy picked up his secure phone and started making calls. Within 6 hours, his team was assembled at a classified base in Nevada. They stood in a briefing room, looking at the same alien pictures the president had seen. "Gentlemen, ladies," Murphy said, "we're going to space. We're going to fight aliens. We're going to save a species from extinction. Any questions?" Staff Sergeant Garcia raised his hand. "Sir, do we know what these Korvac look like?" Murphy pressed. A button. The screen showed a 7-foot-tall creature covered in natural armor with claws like knives and teeth like a shark. "They're big, they're strong, and they're mean," Murphy said. "They've been killing for 1,000 years. They think they're the toughest things in the galaxy." Lieutenant Commander Stone smiled. "They haven't met us yet." "That's right," Murphy said. "They picked on peaceful people who don't fight back. Now they're going to learn what happens when you hurt innocents while humans are watching." Captain Brooks studied the alien ship designs on another screen. "Sir, their technology is way ahead of ours. How do we fight that?" "The same way humans have always fought superior enemies," Murphy replied. "We get close. We get personal. We make them fight our kind of war instead of theirs." The team spent the next 18 hours preparing. They studied alien technology, practiced with new weapons, and learned everything they could about their enemy. As the USS Defiance prepared for Chiam launch, Murphy stood on the bridge with his team. Through the windows, he could see Earth getting smaller. "Remember," he told his people, "we're not just representing our country up there, we're representing our entire species." Let's show the galaxy what humans do when someone asks for help. The OW ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward a war zone 43 light-years away. The USS Defiance dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Valian star system. Colonel Murphy stood on the bridge, looking at the screens that showed what was left of an alien world. 3 Korvac warships hung in space above, the planet like vultures. "My God," Captain Brooks whispered. She was the team's pilot and had seen many terrible things in her career, but this was different. The planet below looked like it was dying. Brown clouds covered most of the surface where green forests used to grow. Lieutenant Commander Stone checked her equipment one more time. "Sir, sensors show the Korvac ships are firing on civilian targets. They're not even trying to capture anything. They're just killing." Staff Sergeant Garcia looked at the tactical display. The enemy ships were huge compared to the Defiance. Each one was 3 times longer and covered with weapons. "Those things could blow us apart without trying hard." Murphy nodded. "Probably. But they don't know what we're capable of. Remember, we're not here to win a fair fight, we're here to stop a massacre." The communications officer looked up from his station. "Sir, the lead Korvac ship is sending us a message, audio only." "Put it through," Murphy ordered. A rough voice filled the bridge, speaking English with a strange accent. "Small ship, you are in Korvac hunting grounds. Leave now or be destroyed. This is your only warning." Murphy picked up the communications microphone. "This is Colonel Murphy of the United States Space Force. You are committing genocide against a peaceful species. Surrender now, and we will spare your lives." Laughter came through the speakers. "Humans? We have heard of your pathetic species. You fight with primitive weapons and chemical explosives. Your ship has no energy shields, no plasma cannons. You are insects compared to us." "Then you won't mind proving it," Murphy replied. The largest Korvac ship began moving toward them. On the view screen, Murphy could see its gun ports opening. The alien vessel was beautiful in a deadly way, with smooth curves and glowing energy conduits running along its hull. "All hands, prepare for combat," Murphy announced. "Remember, they think we're primitives. Let's use that." The Korvac ship fired first. Bright energy beams lanced out toward the Defiance, but Captain Brooks was ready. She threw the human ship into a spinning dive that no alien pilot had ever seen before. The energy beams missed by hundreds of meters. "They're targeting. Systems expect us to fly in straight lines," Brooks called out as she twisted the ship through impossible maneuvers. They've never fought anyone crazy enough to do this. The Korvac ship tried to track them, but Brooks kept the Defiance moving in patterns that made no sense to alien minds. She flew like she was in an Earth fighter jet, not a space cruiser. "Target their weapon ports," Murphy ordered. "Let's see how their shields handle kinetic energy." The Defiance's railguns fired. Instead of energy beams, they shot solid metal projectiles at tremendous speed. The rounds hit the Korvac ship's shields and punched straight through like they weren't there. Explosions bloomed along the alien ship's hull. Atmosphere vented into space through holes that hadn't existed seconds before. "Impossible," came the voice from the Korvac ship. "How are your primitive weapons penetrating our shields?" Murphy smiled grimly. Human scientists had studied every piece of alien technology they could find. They discovered that most alien shields were designed to stop energy weapons. Nobody in the galaxy still used simple projectiles. "Because we're too stupid to know it won't work," Murphy replied. The second Korvac ship joined the fight, trying to box in the human vessel. But Staff Sergeant Garcia had been studying their movement patterns. "Sir, they fight like honor-bound warriors. They take turns attacking. They give us time to recover between assaults." "Then let's not give them the same courtesy," Murphy ordered. "Brooks, take us in close." Captain Brooks dove the Defiance toward the nearest enemy ship. Alien weapons fired all around them, but she kept the human vessel in the blind spots between gun turrets. "Stone, Garcia, get ready for boarding action," Murphy commanded. "Sir, we're going to board their ship?" Garcia asked. "They think we're primitives who can't fight in space," Murphy said. "Let's show them how we fight up close." The Defiance slammed into the Korvac ship's docking bay. The impact crushed alien fighters and sent debris flying everywhere, Emergency fields snapped into place to keep the atmosphere in, but now the two ships were locked together. Murphy led his team through the airlock into alien territory. The corridors were tall and wide, built for 7-foot-tall Korvac warriors. Strange lights cast weird shadows on metal walls covered with alien writing. They moved through the ship like they were clearing a building in an Earth city. Stone took point, checking corners with her weapon ready. Garcia covered the rear, watching for enemies trying to flank them. Brooks stayed with the team but kept her pilot's instincts sharp, memorizing their route back to the ship. The first Korvac warrior they met was everything the intelligence reports had said: huge, armored, and armed with an energy weapon that could cut through steel. It roared a battle cry and charged straight at them, but it made the mistake of charging down a narrow corridor. Stone put 3 rounds center mass before it covered half the distance. The alien's natural armor wasn't designed to stop human bullets at close range. More Korvac appeared, but they fought like individual warriors seeking personal glory. Each one wanted to be the hero who killed the humans. They got in each other's way and blocked their own lines of fire. Murphy's team fought like a unit. They moved together, covered each other, and created overlapping fields of fire that cut down any enemy who showed themselves. Within 20 minutes, they had fought their way to the ship's bridge. Korvac bodies lay scattered through the corridors. Behind them, the survivors had barricaded themselves in side compartments. The bridge was a massive chamber filled with holographic displays and control stations. 3 Korvac officers stood behind an energy barrier, their weapons pointed at the humans. "Surrender your ship," Murphy ordered. The lead Korvac officer, wearing more decorations than the others, bared his teeth. "Korvac do not surrender to inferior species. Then you'll die like the rest," Stone replied calmly. Garcia had been studying the energy barrier. He pulled out a small device that looked like a grenade but wasn't quite the same. "Human electromagnetic pulse device," he explained, to the confused aliens. "We use them to disable electronics." He tossed the device through the barrier. It detonated with a flash of invisible energy. Every holographic display on the bridge went dark. The barrier flickered and died. The Korvac officers found themselves facing human weapons with nowhere to hide. "I said surrender your ship," Murphy repeated. For the first time in their history, Korvac warriors dropped their weapons and raised their hands. 20 minutes later, Captain Brooks was piloting a captured Korvac warship, while the Defiance followed. Behind, the remaining enemy vessels had fled rather than face the same fate. On the bridge of their prize, Murphy opened a channel to the planet below. "Attention, Valian survivors. This is Colonel Murphy of Earth. The hunters have become the hunted. We're here to help." News of the human victory spread through Korvac space faster than their fastest ships. Warlord Krextar sat in his command throne aboard the massive dreadnought Doombringer, listening to reports that made no sense. "A single primitive ship destroyed. 3 of our warships," his communications officer reported. "The survivors say the humans fight like demons. They use weapons that ignore our shields." Krextar was the most feared Korvac commander in the galaxy. He had conquered 17 worlds and never lost a battle. His ship was the size of a small city and carried enough firepower to crack a planet. "Impossible," he growled. "Humans are barely out of their caves. They have no space technology, no energy weapons, no understanding of real warfare." His second-in-command stepped forward nervously. "My lord, perhaps we should study these humans more carefully before we attack them." Krextar's claws extended from his hands. In one swift motion, he grabbed his officer by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "Are you suggesting that I, Krextar the Destroyer, should fear a handful of primitives?" His voice was deadly quiet. "No, my lord," the officer gasped. "I only meant we should be prepared." Krextar dropped him and turned back to his screens. "Assemble the hunting fleet. 20 ships. We will find these humans and make them pay for humiliating us. Their deaths will be broadcast across the galaxy, as a warning." Meanwhile, Colonel Murphy and his team were learning everything they could about their enemy. The captured Korvac ship was like a floating museum of alien technology. Valian refugees who understood Korvac systems helped them figure out how everything worked. Their computers are more advanced than ours, Lieutenant Commander Stone reported, but they're designed for simple commands. The Korvac aren't used to complex tactics. Staff Sergeant Garcia was studying Korvac weapons. These energy rifles are powerful, but they overheat quickly. And look at this. He held up an alien grenade. It's designed to kill everything in a big area, no precision at all. Captain Brooks had been examining the ship's engines and weapons systems. They build everything for maximum power, no subtlety. It's like they think louder and bigger always wins. Murphy nodded. That tells us how they think. They're used to overwhelming weaker enemies with brute force. They've probably never fought anyone who could match their firepower. A Valian refugee named Veltar approached them. His blue skin was scarred from Korvac attacks, but his large eyes were bright with hope. "Colonel Murphy," he said in careful English, "I worked on Korvac ships as a slave before I escaped. I know their weaknesses." "Tell me," Murphy said. "They use a central computer to coordinate their fleets. If you can access it, you can disrupt their communications. Also, their ships have backup power systems in the lower decks. If those fail, their weapons stop working." Murphy smiled. "Veltar, you might have just won us this war." Over the next week, Murphy's team prepared for the coming battle in ways the Korvac could never imagine. They didn't build bigger guns or stronger shields. Instead, they studied their enemy and planned like the special operations soldiers they were. Captain Brooks learned to fly Korvac fighters, practicing until she could pilot them better than their original crews. Staff Sergeant Garcia rigged human explosives to look like alien equipment. Lieutenant Commander Stone memorized the layout of every type of Korvac ship. When Krextar's hunting fleet arrived in the system, they found something they didn't expect. The human ship was gone. Only empty space and floating debris remained. "Where are they?" Krextar demanded. "Scan every moon, every asteroid. Find them." What the Korvac didn't know was that the humans were hiding inside a hollowed-out asteroid, watching and waiting. Murphy had learned patience in a dozen Earth wars. Sometimes the best strategy was to let the enemy come to you. For 3 days, the Korvac fleet searched the system. They grew frustrated and careless. Ships spread out to cover more ground. Commanders stopped following proper procedures. That's when the humans struck. It started with a supply convoy heading to refuel Krextar's forward scouts. 3 cargo ships protected by 2 fighters, moving through empty space between planets. Captain Brooks, flying a stolen Korvac fighter, appeared on their sensors. The escort pilots barely had time to identify her as friendly before she opened fire. Her ship looked like one of theirs, but she flew it like a human. The escort fighters exploded before they could send a warning. Brooks docked with the first cargo ship and Staff Sergeant Garcia led a boarding party inside. 20 minutes later, they owned 3 ships full of Korvac weapons and supplies. The pattern repeated across the system. Human teams appeared from nowhere, struck hard, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. They hit fuel depots, communication relays, and isolated ships. Lieutenant Commander Stone became especially feared among the Korvac crews. She specialized in infiltrating their ships while they were docked for repairs. Instead of destroying them, she would sabotage their systems in creative ways. Navigation computers were reprogrammed to send ships to the wrong coordinates. Weapon targeting systems were adjusted to miss by meters. Food replicators were set to produce meals that made Korvac warriors sick. The most terrifying attack happened when Stone's team infiltrated the heavy cruiser Death's Shadow while it was undergoing maintenance. They didn't plant bombs or steal anything obvious. Instead, they left small devices throughout the ship: motion sensors in sleeping quarters, cameras in private areas, speakers that would whisper human voices in the middle of the night cycle. Within a week, the Death Shadow crew was reporting strange noises, moving shadows, and equipment that seemed to have a mind of its own. Half the warriors refused to sleep in their own quarters. Krextar watched his fleet fall apart from an enemy he couldn't see or touch. Ships disappeared, supply lines were cut. His warriors started jumping at shadows and refusing dangerous assignments. Find them, he roared at his remaining officers. Use every sensor, check every asteroid. I want these humans found and killed. But Murphy had learned something important about Korvac psychology from the refugees. The aliens were bullies who preyed on the weak. When faced with an enemy they couldn't understand or defeat easily, they became afraid. Fear made them make mistakes. The final insult came when Krexitar woke up in his private quarters aboard the Doombringer to find a message written on his wall in human letters. It was in English, but the ship's computer translated it for him. We know where you sleep. We know where you eat. We know where you hide. Stop killing innocents, or we will stop you permanently. This is your only warning. The message was signed, Earth's Kill Team. For the first time in his long career, Warlord Krexitar felt genuine fear. These humans fought like nothing he had ever encountered. They didn't seek glory or honor. They simply eliminated threats with cold efficiency. His mighty fleet was being destroyed by 12 humans who fought like ghosts. 3 months after the humans arrived, the Galactic Council received reports that seemed impossible. The Korvac hegemony, which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, was falling apart. Ships were fleeing their own territory. Warlords were abandoning conquered worlds. Ambassador Zethkari stood before the council once again, but this time he was not begging. He was reporting victory. The human ship USS Defiance has secured our home system, he announced to the stunned assembly. Colonel Murphy's team has rescued over 800,000 Valiant survivors. The Korvac forces have retreated to their core worlds. The bird-like alien who had opposed asking for human help shifted nervously on his perch. How is this possible? 12 humans against an entire military empire? They do not fight like we do, Zethkari explained. They do not seek honor or glory. They simply eliminate threats, efficiently, completely, without mercy for those who harm innocents. On the view screen, images showed Korvac ships fleeing human patrols. Entire fleets that had once dominated space lanes now ran at the first sign of human activity. The most feared warriors in the galaxy had become frightened of shadows. Meanwhile, Warlord Krexitar sat in his throne room aboard the Doombringer, staring at reports of his latest defeat. 3 more ships had disappeared overnight. His communications network was completely compromised. Half his remaining fleet was too scared to leave port. My lord, his communications officer said carefully, we are receiving a transmission from the human vessel. Put it through, Krexitar growled. Colonel Murphy's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired but determined. Behind him, Krexitar could see his team preparing weapons and checking equipment. Warlord Krexitar, Murphy said calmly, this is your final warning. Order all Korvac forces to withdraw from Valian space and stop attacks on civilian populations. You have 24 hours to comply. Krexitar laughed, but it sounded forced. You think 12 primitives can threaten the mighty Korvac Empire? I have 1,000 ships. I have warriors who have conquered worlds. You had 1,000 ships, Murphy corrected. Our count shows you have maybe 200 left, and most of those are running away. Your warriors are jumping at shadows because they know we're coming for them. 1 ship cannot defeat my entire fleet, Krexitar insisted. Murphy smiled coldly. We're not coming at you with 1 ship. We're coming at you with something much worse. We're coming at you with human warfare. The transmission ended. Krexitar stared at the empty screen for a long moment. Then he began issuing orders. All ships form defensive positions around the Doombringer. Maximum shields, all weapons ready, we end this now. What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. The humans didn't attack Krexitar's fleet directly. Instead, they did something no alien commander had ever imagined. They recruited help. Over the past months, Murphy's team had been in contact with slaves and prisoners throughout Korvac space. Every species the Korvac had conquered. Every world they had stripped of resources. Every family they had destroyed. The message spread through hidden communication networks. The humans are here. The killers can be stopped. Fight back. It started on slave worlds where Korvac overseers suddenly found their workers in open rebellion. Then it spread to conquered planets where resistance groups emerged from hiding. Finally, It reached Korvac, ships where alien slaves sabotaged systems and opened airlocks. Captain Brooks led the final assault on the Doombringer, but she wasn't alone. She commanded a fleet of stolen Korvac ships crewed by former slaves who had learned human tactics. They attacked in coordinated waves, using the enemy's own weapons against them. Staff Sergeant Garcia had trained former prisoners in urban combat techniques. They boarded Korvac vessels and fought through corridors with the skill of Earth Special Forces. The Korvac warriors, used to fighting individual duels, couldn't handle coordinated team tactics. Lieutenant Commander Stone had taught resistance fighters how to hack Korvac computer systems. Across the Empire, navigation computers failed, weapon systems shut down, and communication networks broadcast messages of hope instead of orders. The battle for the Doombringer lasted 6 hours. When it ended, Warlord Krextar found himself kneeling before Colonel Murphy in his own throne room. His ship was controlled by former slaves. His empire was crumbling as conquered worlds declared independence. "You have lost," Murphy said simply. "Your choice now is how you want to lose. You can surrender and face justice, or you can keep fighting and face extinction." Krextar looked around at his fallen warriors and destroyed command center. "How?" he asked. "How did primitives defeat us?" "We're not primitives," Murphy replied. "We're survivors. We've been fighting wars since before we left our caves. We know how to turn enemies into allies. We know how to make bullies afraid. Most importantly, we know how to protect people who can't protect themselves." The surrender was broadcast across the galaxy. The Korvac Empire, which had terrorized dozens of species for 1,000 years, officially ended when Krextar handed his command staff to a human colonel. But the real victory came later, when the rescued Valian refugees returned to their home world. Zeth Kari stood in the ruins of his capital city, watching as construction crews began rebuilding. Human engineers worked alongside Valian architects to create something new and beautiful. Colonel Murphy found him there as the sun set. "Over the crystal spires, my people owe you everything," Zeth Kari said. "How can we ever repay this debt?" Murphy looked at the construction crews, seeing humans and aliens working together. "Just remember that someone came when you called for help. When the next species needs aid, be ready to answer." 6 months later, the USS Defiance patrolled the borders of what had been Korvac space. The ship had been refitted with alien technology, making it faster and more powerful. Murphy's team had grown too, now including volunteers from a dozen species who wanted to learn human tactics. They were no longer just Earth's representatives. They had become something new. They were the galaxy's protectors, ready to answer any call for help against those who preyed on the innocent. The message had spread throughout known space. If you hurt peaceful people, if you prey on the weak, if you commit genocide for sport, humanity's kill team will find you. They will stop you. And they will make sure you never hurt anyone again. On the bridge of the Defiance, Colonel Murphy received a new transmission. Another species in a distant sector was asking for help. Another group of bullies thought they could murder innocents without consequences. Murphy looked at his team. Captain Brooks was studying star charts. Staff Sergeant Garcia was cleaning his weapons. Lieutenant Commander Stone was reviewing intelligence reports. They were ready. "Set course for the Centauri sector," Murphy ordered. "We have work to do." The ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying Earth's promise to every corner of the galaxy. Nobody fights alone when humans are watching.